Okay, we're live. Harold, can you hold on? Okay, Harold, talk.
Josh, good morning.
Yes, we did it. We got it sorted out. One semi-technical person and one, mm, I don't know
We'll just
why.
leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So I just want to check out there for those that are not me. All of the right lights are lighting up. So if you're in chat, make sure you hear Harold and myself. I want to make sure that we have all that clear. Give me a thumbs
Great,
up
and
or
good morning,
something.
everyone.
Yes. Harold is way nicer than I am. So he's going to give you all the nice pleasantries you don't normally get.
We both know, Josh, that's not true. There's somewhat of an acting going on. Maybe by the end of this, my true colors and personality, as it is directed towards you, will come out. We'll see.
Well, I was thinking about uh, in introducing you. I'm like, man, I'm going to sound way nicer, Harold, than I ever am in real life. Like, I'm never this nice to you. I'm going to say very nice things. It's going to be uncomfortable.
It's already been uncomfortable for 3 minutes just in our little pre-call of these formalities and pleasantries, and my body's about to go into shock.
Yeah, it's not comfortable. Not comfortable at all. Okay. So we have a couple people out there. We'll people continue to trickle in. Let's see what other news. We got a new microphone. If you're on stream, you see got a fancy new microphone. The wife and daughter are starting a podcast soon, so we needed a second microphone, and I've been using that microphone for a long time. I've aspired to get this fancy Shure SM7B best microphone. I don't know. We'll find out. You guys will tell me. But that's the exciting new news here on the Kazi front. So, okay, we got about 5, 6. All right, good. We are trickling in. Starting to... Okay. So let's see. So before last week's stream, we had some people pop into Discord, and if you aren't on, came in and said, "Hey, Cole Trickle, nice. Wow, you don't get a Cole Trickle reference every day.
Days of Thunder. Even I get
My
going back
gosh,
to our youth, Josh.
that is impressive. Jeez, that totally derailed me. Well done. Okay, so last week, we were trying to figure out what to talk about, and one of the things that came up was a request. Definitely take a bow. Was a request for, hey, how do I get hired in these days? And I did the best to answer, but in reality, I knew I was not terribly well equipped to make that a reality. So I thought, hey, who could help me? And none other than Harold Zeichner, friend of the family, friend of the stream, friend of the podcast, friend of the triangle. How about that, Harold? Um,
That is the most build up I've certainly received from you in the past.
yes. So Harold and I have been working together for, it's got to be at least a decade now, right?
It is. It
Yeah.
is
God, we are old.
crazy.
So Harold helped
Uh,
me hire a ton of people at Teradata in like around 2010. We were on a hiring spree, and I was new to the area and needed help. And Harold somehow found me. I can't tell you I was smart enough to go find Harold. Harold found me, and we spent a lot of time working together trying to figure out how to hire people effectively. And Harold was one of those guys that just got it. There's a handful of recruiters that I've worked with in the past. There's like 3 that I can think of that I could call and say, hey, I need someone that fits us. And I knew that anybody that they sent me would be an almost perfect match. So that is wonderful as a hiring manager. And over the years, we've stayed in touch. Um, all of the hiring we did at Teradata, I'm pretty sure helped build his house. He will tell you that's not true. But I stopped hiring from him over the past 5 years as I've gone with smaller companies, as he's let me know. I haven't been giving him as much business as I used to, but we stayed in touch. And he was the guy that I would trust to get on with you guys and just give you the honest lay of the land of what things look like out there, what companies are looking for, what the trends are. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it still an I don't know? When Harold and I talked about this, it was just, hey, let's tell the truth. We don't want to make it sound better than it is or worse than it is. So we're going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to shut up, and Harold's going to talk a little bit about what he's seeing. So I don't know what that looks like, but Harold, my friend, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Joshua, which I
Ooh,
almost never
wow.
never call him Joshua. But first of all, to give everyone an idea, I don't see the stream coming in right now. Josh was able to conference me in via audio via
Hmm.
Discord, and but I want to thank each of you for allowing me to speak with you and hopefully answer any questions that come in. As Josh mentioned, we go back a little over a decade, and I'll just give a little bit of context on my background, and hopefully it'll help the conversation flow a little bit. So, for about 13 years, I've been in the technical staffing arena. My role is really the front line, I guess, best way to put it. As Josh mentioned, I work directly with the companies, the clients, the hiring managers, the directors. I'm not on the recruiting side per se, but the company I work for has a team of recruiters, and essentially, I'm out there trying to really understand what companies are looking for. What's the business, not just the technical need, but what's the business need? What's the business problem that needs to be solved? Is it a short term role to fill the gap on a project? Is it a long term role? And often companies will come to us because we've got a pretty strong pipeline of individuals. Well, usually on the agency side, we can move a little bit quicker than some of the internal recruiters can. But though I am technically not a recruiter, I'd probably argue that is a big part of what I do. It's really dive in once I have a need from a company for a particular skill. It could be a software engineer, it could be a QA tester, it could be a scrum master, an agile coach, regardless of what it is. Once we've identified the need, uh, my team of recruiters will speak to individuals like you that are entertaining offers, or maybe in some cases not even on the market, just
Yeah, yeah.
happy where you're at, but we'll reach out, right? Then I'll dive in and jump on the phone and have conversations with candidates to really try to mirror, is what the candidate is, you as a candidate looking for, is this the opportunity that our client has? So it's not overly nuanced, but I think it needs to be done right. So I wanted to give a little bit of an idea on what I do. So today, I do not have any magic answers. I'm not going to. I know Josh is a little bit late on these things, so I won't say the term, but I won't BS anybody that I've got all these answers that I can tell you exactly what today, 30 days from now, 6 months from now, look like for myself, for what I do. But I'm being a little conservative and trying to take that type of approach on. I'm not sure exactly how the market's going to play out, but I will talk about what I've seen so far, what at least my opinion is, and areas that I think all of us would be wise to adhere to, and best practices. Um, what industries might be doing well, maybe
Mhm.
places to look, things like that. So, Josh, does that? I know that was a lot. Josh
Yeah.
has talked with me for a while. He's used to me talking. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, like you said, is just like there's somebody in the chat joking that, hey, I came here for some magic answers, and we already said we're not going to do that. So sorry. Um, but really, any insight that we can give, because Harold, this is something that you do every day, and you get that sense and feeling, and we don't want to lie to folks. Just want to give them the honest, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Like, and even if it's, hey, like everybody stopped calling me, and everybody I called had said we aren't hiring. That's at least info that people can use. It might not be the info that they want, but let's just start there. Like, what's the trend of the volume of people reaching out to you and you calling people and saying, yeah, I actually need your help right now? What's that look like?
Sure. Yeah, it slowed down. Certainly. There's not as many opportunities today as there were 30 days ago,
Mhm.
45 days ago. It's just a reality. A lot of companies, even if they're well equipped, have just taken this time to probably see what's going to happen. With that said, hires, and we've got clients that are hiring.
Hmm.
But I'll give you some examples of things I've seen, right? So, um, unrelated to actually what I do for work, my wife is an HR business partner at one of the largest technical companies in the world. Thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, global organization that is positioned pretty well during this time.
Hmm.
And for a number of weeks, they went on a hiring freeze. And the main reason they went on a hiring freeze was to ensure that when they started hiring again, which they have, that they would be able to onboard people virtually, not only be able to do it, but be able to do it that the experience would be the same as any other time. So you've got some companies right now that are, well, all companies are certainly revamping the way they bring individuals into an organization, whether that's as a contractor or as a full-time employee. The normal onboarding process isn't
Hmm.
valid right now. So you're going to get your laptop shipped to you. You're going to have your first day is going to be all virtual discussions, right? So I think that's part of it. Companies right now are trying to figure out a way to still hire and have the hiring process be as enjoyable and as effective as possible. So trends that at least I'm seeing, right? So every state right now obviously is taking a little bit of a different approach. There seems to be different pressures depending on the state you live in on when you're going to reopen. And even so, what does that exactly mean? I think for larger companies, physically reopening, meaning their employees are going to go back into the office, it's going to be one of the last things that we do see. Just you've got a company, you got a campus of 1,000 people, and they haven't been set up to have the right social distancing, the
Hmm.
right
Hmm.
amount of people apart from each other. So I think companies, large companies, realize that we still we've got critical projects, we've got needs that we need to hire people, but we need to figure out how we're going to do that. So I think that's an evolving process. It's
Yeah.
the best way I can say
Gotcha.
that.
Okay. So I can give a little bit of insight at Storable, where I spend most of my time with Kraz 457. Um, we were hiring really aggressively. We're hiring a significant amount of people in 2020. And as this all started to unfold, we were still going through the hiring process, and interviewing became 100% virtual. And that was a learning situation for us as interviewers, but also for the people that were on the other side of the table trying to figure out, how do I navigate this? How do I figure out if this is a company that I want to work for? So that was a interesting situation that we worked through. We ended up hiring a couple folks, and I did have someone start, a product owner start a couple weeks into the stay-at-home order, and that onboarding, to Harold's point, has been different. I don't want to say weird; it was just different, and I wasn't sure how to handle the whole thing. So he and I stayed in touch, and I had a normal ramp plan that I had built for product owners that would come on board. And I said to him, I was like, listen, this is what it looks like when you're in the office. You can sit down and talk with people. I don't know what it looks like in this new world, so we're gonna have to chart that course together and figure out what makes sense, because we hadn't been down that path before. So to Harold's point, we are trying to figure out what all of this looks like, and that's a key thing that has everybody slowing down a little bit. Harold, one of the questions that came in from the chat is, are there some jobs that are easier to fill? What does the spectrum look like? Like, do you see that devs are still getting hired, or Scrum Master jobs have stopped, or product owners are super crazy hot? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, I don't know if I have enough data across industry, across geos
Hmm.
to definitely
Right.
say yes, this particular area is
Okay.
hot, this particular area has slowed down. But here's what I will say: just being in technology is,
Hmm.
for obvious reasons, an advantage right now. Okay, um, looking at a few things, right? So everyone's gone virtual right now,
Right.
and there's certainly a lot of evidence, a lot of thought, a lot of feeling that okay, well, when this all ends, which we don't know when it will end, and probably not going to fully end until a vaccine is out there.
Right.
Will there be? Will companies who in the past were reluctant to allow individuals to work remotely change that now that they've been able to see how effective
Right.
their employees are? So with that, the need for technology is going to continue to increase. So whether that's as a dev, whether that's in infrastructure related roles, I can certainly see a lot of security roles, support roles, things of that nature continuing to
Mhm.
increase. But if you're a strong dev, if you're a strong product owner, if you're a strong scrum master, I do still see opportunities out there. Now, I think certainly if we're talking, anything product owner or scrum master,
Mhm.
people getting comfortable with distributed teams and not being co-located. Each organization is a little bit different and on that, right? But I think as the evidence comes in that this can be effective if you've got the right individuals on your team, which really is what everything always comes down to.
Mhm.
Companies will continue to hire. What I would like to point out is something that I would say if we didn't have this COVID-19 situation occurring is what you've got to do to stand out. Okay, so um, there, it's just being candid. It's much more
Mhm.
difficult to find a dev. Okay, often than a project manager or a scrum master. I would recommend that, and this is something that Josh and I worked on years ago. Is have your resume tell a story. Don't have your resume be a job description or just a list of every tool that
Yeah.
you've done. Really demonstrate. Use your resume almost as a bio of how you've made a company better, how you've made a product better, what you as an individual did that impacted your previous role or current role in a positive manner. When I look at resumes and I see just a bunch of skills or
Mhm.
5 years as a product owner, 7 years as a Java developer, whatever it may be, all the resumes start looking similar. So
Yeah.
it's really difficult for that first glance to stand out. So talk about in your job description, okay? What you did, what you were responsible for, how you made the company better. Is it a cost savings? Is it a product efficiency? I think that hasn't changed today opposed to a month ago.
Yeah.
Continue to have your story be told and tell that story in a way that is going to make you an attractive candidate. I get excited when I see resumes that are telling stories as opposed to looking like a job description.
Mhm.
Does that make
Yeah, I mean,
sense?
yeah, that's so Bob and I get a lot of folks reaching out to us, and we end up with a fair amount also on the stream that are trying to make a transition into a new role, or maybe they've decided they want an agile role and they've never done that before. So I was helping someone, um, a coworker's, I believe, fiance, and she was trying to transition into a product owner role, and I spent some time looking at her resume, and I gave her the same feedback that you just gave, was that your resume reads like a job description. Like, I know what a product owner does. Don't tell me that you did the things. Show me how what you did made a difference. And that's really what I look for, because you're right. Once a resume looks like, hey, I listed my responsibilities, like that doesn't tell me that you're special. That tells me that you do what you're asked. And
Yep.
I'm not trying to hire somebody like that. So those are the things that I look for, that I see a lot. Make sure that you're investing time within the resume, and reach out and have someone take a look at it. Somebody that that you know and trust, that will give you good, honest feedback and won't just say, "Yeah, looks good," right? Like you want somebody to take a deep, hard look at that and really let you know, "Hey, I would change this," or "This doesn't make any sense," or "How does this separate you from all the other folks that have the same looking resume?" Okay, so we've had a fair amount of people join, and actually Scrum Sarge, longtime viewer and one of our mods, Lori Blue also joined, a longtime viewer. She helped drum up some noise to get people here to help out. So thank you, Lori, to helping with that. Harold Zeichner is on Discord chatting with us, and he's a recruiting specialist. I won't say a recruiter. Account manager, is that like what's the proper title for you?
Yeah, there's no proper title. I like to think I just help. I'm at the intersection of companies hiring
Yeah,
talent.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
just to give a window into how it works, as a hiring manager, you end up getting connected with a account manager who is responsible for the relationship between their firm and your company. And that's the person you want to connect with, because the recruiters will often churn through. So the people doing the searching that are on the front line talking to people in that first point, that's a busy and hard business. And that churns a lot. And Harold was the guy that always made sure that all of the recruiters that were working with him were 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 giving us the right people. And Harold was that last line before he said, "Josh, here's someone you should talk to. Like, I've talked to this person and they're a great fit." And when Harold said that, I was like, "Okay, cool. Let's just get him in here and talk. We don't even need a phone screen," because that's what you're paying for. You are paying for an extension of your company to go and validate that this person is a really good fit. And that's what Harold has done for me for years, and why I've stayed in touch with him. And whenever I need someone, he's one of the first people I call. And he will bark at me if he's not the first, which is fair.
Well, well, it's part of my job description. But Josh, I think there's an important distinction too, and I don't. If I start going too long, Josh, you'll tell me
I
to
will rein
stop,
you in.
which and you'll be excited to do
Yes.
so. So I think there's an important distinction, and without getting too into the weeds about the business itself, there's the difference between an internal recruiting organization, i.e., the recruit. If a job is at Cisco and the recruiter actually is a Cisco employee
Hmm.
and they're working on full-time roles at Cisco, or an agency, which
Hmm.
is what I'm part of, a staffing agency that more often than not, but not always exclusively, works contract and contract to hire roles. Though there are times that we do work direct hire roles, and there's an economic part of that. Just to give you guys an understanding, more often companies will hire internal recruiters to hire full-time roles, so they don't have to pay a larger fee to an
Hmm.
agency.
Hmm.
They try to avoid that, though there are times when they're realizing they're not finding the right talent, and we've got a different candidate pool, or we work at a different pace, or we're incented a little bit more to find individuals. They'll turn to us.
Hmm.
So if you're working with an internal recruiter, and especially during these times, if you're applying for a job, you have to have the expectation that hundreds of others have applied for that job. It's just a
Yep.
reality. And often of those hundreds, there's just a lot of people that aren't, based on their past experience, qualified. They may want to do the job, they may have
Hmm.
some of those jobs, but as an internal recruiter at a company, and I used Cisco as an example, it could be any company though. Often they're seeing hundreds of resumes come in.
Hmm.
So how do you get even noticed during that period? You could be a perfect fit for that job, but
Hmm.
you don't know who's on the other end of that inbox looking at their resumes. It might be someone who's been a recruiter for 10 years. It could be someone who's been a recruiter for 10 minutes.
Right.
They also, have to view hundreds and hundreds, and maybe they've looked at the first five.
Right.
Maybe they're only looking at the first page of your resume. There's just so many variables. And this is why, again, it's important to have a well crafted resume, but it's also important to follow up.
Right.
And this is my opinion. As a candidate, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a little over aggressive. And man, that might not be the right term, but ambitious.
Yeah.
Just don't wait for things to happen, because so many people apply for jobs. that it is often hard to stand out. So I'll stop there. Josh, does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
You've been
Yeah.
on the end of it, Josh, where you'll have a role at one of your companies that you've got posted, and you're not going to a staffing agency because your company's
Oh,
rule is, hey, we're going to try to
yeah.
do this internal. But then how do you weed through? I mean, how many resumes would you
It's
see if on a product owner?
yeah, Scrum Sarge, who I said has been with us from the start, just talked about sifting through 600 resumes for one position, and that's a reasonable number. And to Harold's point, I'd say over half of them, probably closer to 75%, just clearly aren't even the right fit. People are just spamming. So that's the hard part, is just like getting through that noise to the ones that matter, and like maintaining the energy after like a couple hours of going through these and like finding the one. So I just try and separate out the piles of ones that clearly aren't a fit and the ones that look like they could be, and then come back to them later, because otherwise it's not fair. So yeah, it's and to think about it, yes, there have been hundreds of people that apply to every position that you're trying to get, and that just increased drastically because of the number of people that have unfortunately lost their job in some way. The folks that need jobs out there just jumped to a crazy amount. Yes, that is Lincoln back there. He's walking around. He just finished school. That's like, it just got harder. So Harold, we had a couple of questions, and I'm gonna preempt one, but I want you to jump in. So John asked about that if your firm sent in a candidate for 10 positions and that hasn't landed you a job, do you try to place them again, or do you just ghost them? And my argument is that if that company hasn't worked with you after each one to say, hey, here's why you didn't get the fit, here's what I think we should change up for next time, if they aren't actively working trying to help place you, then that's not a great company to be working with, because there's some good firms out there and some bad firms, to where it's just a numbers game. And those ones where it's just a numbers game, you might land, you might get a good fit, but at that point it's just a numbers game. So what I try to do is I try and work with people that are going to invest in both the people trying to find jobs and in the company that's trying to hire them. So Harold, let's talk through that. Let's say, hey, you've been working this person, you think they're a really good hire, but for some reason it hasn't worked. What do you do? How do you talk to that person? How do you help them out?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. And unfortunately, in the industry I'm in, there's a lot of companies that maybe don't do things in the most professional way, which sometimes will give recruiters or
Mm-hmm.
staffing agencies a bad name, and it comes with the territory. It's true. There are a lot of
Right.
people that just don't follow up, and so a couple thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm confident enough to send somebody for a position, I always want to maintain that relationship and that contact, but I'll also be straightforward. Yesterday, I had to make a difficult phone call on a candidate I thought was getting a job, had been through a number of interviews. And what I've seen happen in the past at other places is, so this candidate didn't get the job.
Mm-hmm.
Someone would have maybe sent an email, if that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do that. I didn't have every answer to her questions, but I called her. I spoke through it. We had, she had spent a significant amount of time prepping for these interviews. And what I said is, look, I'm going to continue as I see opportunities. I think you're a great candidate. Look for roles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also said, though, if you're seeing something, if you've got questions, if you just want to hear how the market is, please give me a call as well. So it's never in my mind acceptable ever to ghost.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unprofessional, and it's just not the right way of doing things. So I'd be leery about working with organizations like that.
Right.
The flip side, sometimes those organizations do have access to roles, because we all don't have access to all the roles. Every
Yeah, that's a good
staffing
point.
agency has different partnerships, different relationships. Again, I'll use, because I'm using them as an example, I'll use Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
I through 13 years of being in this market, I know 50 different hiring managers over there,
Right.
but I don't work with them
Mm-hmm.
because it's there's a million staffing companies, and trying to get a contract in place and be a preferred vendor, and these are some nuanced things,
Right.
doesn't always work. So often if someone asks me about Cisco, I try to help individuals no matter what. What I often share with people is, look, if I can help you, if I can make a phone call, if I can get you through the uh, black hole of resumes, I'm going to do that. But
Right.
I do set the expectation of, can't promise anything. Let me see what I can do to help. What I would say, and I think Josh, this is how you've worked over the years, is from a staffing agency standpoint, you want to have between 2 and 4 strong relationships
Yeah.
in your local market with staffing companies.
Yep.
Now, that's a little counterproductive to what I want. I want Josh just to call
Right.
me, okay?
Right.
But
But
go ahead,
But
Josh.
like even as somebody trying to find a job, I would do the same thing. So just as hiring companies partner with these vendors and these firms to help find jobs, find good account managers that you trust, like Harold, that will tell you the truth, that will fight for you, that maybe a hiring manager doesn't get it. And they're going to place that extra call and like, listen, I think this is someone that's really a good fit and here's why. And that might open a door. So talk to the hiring managers that are out there. And yes, there are some of the larger firms that don't do things the way that I would like, but I have found there are some account managers in those spaces that are good. It's just is this person a good person? And Harold's right. There are three, and my max is like I like to work with three in both directions. Of hey, if I'm looking for a job or if I'm looking to hire people, having those people to call either way. Of hey, listen, Harold, I am not happy. I think I want to find a new job. What's it look like out there? Like Harold's one of the first people I call whenever something like that happens, just to understand what's out there. And there's like three other people that I'll call and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What's out there? What's going on? And
Yeah,
that's not going to flip a switch to where Harold's like, I got a perfect spot for you right now, but that starts to line things up over time. And the key thing that people don't do that makes me sad is they don't invest in the relationship with a account manager like this, like Harold. Having spent time with Harold for a decade, that's paid off huge, right? Aside from all the lunches, which he'll be happy to tell you about all the lunches that he's bought me. That to me,
and
there's
you guys see
tremendous
Josh.
value.
That's not inexpensive. So it's all right. That's the
Oh,
only
there it
low
is.
blow.
We
I'll
started.
get in.
uh,
No, as Josh said, there's not a magic number, but I would recommend having relationships with that 2 to 4, 3 to 5.
mhm,
You don't want to have it more than that because it gets diluted. You don't want to just rely on one person because they just may not have the relationships.
right.
But I would also say, as frustrating as it may be, sometimes you do have to have a little bit of a short memory. So,
Yeah.
XYZ company calls you about a role that you're perfect for, and regardless of what happened, it didn't work out, and then you didn't hear back from them. And then 3 months later, same company calls you about another role that just sounds great. Don't be stubborn about it. At least listen. It could be a different
Yeah.
recruiter. It could be a different company and their process. It's the end game that ultimately matters. But what I would encourage is do everything you can to position yourself as the ideal candidate.
Mhm,
And that goes again beyond just having the skills. It's having the right resume, it's having the right follow up. Sending a thank you email isn't going to get you the job, but it doesn't hurt either, and it
mhm,
doesn't take long.
right.
I know I enjoy when I get them and see them, and it's just a little touch. Having a LinkedIn profile that is up to date, and look, I'm in sales. I'm on LinkedIn 5,000 times a day. I don't expect other individuals to do that, but everyone looks. It's really the first place you, as a recruiter or a salesperson,
Yeah.
that I look. Now, as a salesperson, I'm looking often when I have a candidate to see, what is there something in there that I can actually make your case better to the hiring manager? Is there do you have a GitHub page?
Mhm,
Are you involved in a local group that might be appealing to this company? Just maybe you went to the same college and it's a small college out of state.
mhm,
Who knows what it may be, right? But having, and it's a pain to update these things. Look,
yeah.
I don't always subscribe to what I do. My LinkedIn page, while not bad, needs to be updated.
Yeah.
But I would recommend doing those things.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead, Josh.
I don't even send a resume anymore. Like folks
Yeah.
ask for a resume, like here's my LinkedIn page. That's as good or better. It tells you more about me than a resume. So all of the content I have on my LinkedIn page would be on my resume. And as we talked about earlier, what that LinkedIn page doesn't do is it doesn't tell you these are my job responsibilities. It doesn't say this is the role. It's like here's how I helped make things better. So really invest in that, because as a hiring manager, yes, you go there, you see what they've done, because the thing that I looked for with LinkedIn is that it gives me a little bit more. It shows me a little bit more about what they're up to and who they are. It gives me a bit of a window beyond just the resume. So, Harold, you talked about positioning yourself, and we have a couple questions around that on a couple ends of the spectrum. One, what do you do when you're overqualified for a position? How do you talk or apply to that role? And then we have another one that's a different situation. But let's just focus. Hey, someone is overqualified for a position, but this is a role that they really want to. How do you help them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know if I have the perfect answer, but I think this is where sincerity is going to be uh, your best offense.
Right.
By saying that, the fear, obviously, when you're overqualified, is someone just going to leave the minute they get the job they want, right? So maybe you've been a VP somewhere and you're applying for a manager role. Question is why, right?
Yeah.
If I'm there, the inclination certainly is this just a temporary stop? If
Mhm.
it is, I don't really have much advice for you if that's the case. But if there's a reason that, hey, you know what, the title doesn't matter to me, I want to change industries, or I've always wanted to work at this company, they're doing great things, or just the nature, I need to reinvent myself a little bit, and I know that I might have to, take a, a step back, or um, I think you need to have a justifiable reason that will relate to the company, and then that's where you got to go to work. Okay, maybe you're proactive and say, look, based on
Yeah.
my background and titles, it may appear that I'm a little overqualified for this role, um, but this is why I have interest.
Mhm.
And maybe you include that in a cover letter, in an email. Often with roles, okay, if you're working with a recruiter, you certainly know who you should know. By the way, if a recruiter ever calls you and has a conversation with you and won't tell you who the company they're submitting you to is, stop with that recruiter right there. That's just not good practice. So you should always know the company you're applying for. So if a recruiter from a staffing agency calls you, they'll
Yep.
tell you that. But often, if it's an internal recruiter at a big company, you'll know who the recruiter is as well. If it's
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, usually it has the poster on there. Contact the poster, right? Um, if it's through a website, this is where you may have to do a little homework. Okay, but don't find if again I keep using Cisco as an example. If you got a role, you're applying for a Cisco, and you know who the recruiter is. Well, maybe be proactive and reach out.
Yeah.
You can go on LinkedIn and find 18 different recruiters and reach out to a couple of them.
Yeah.
Be proactive. But to answer the specific question, if you're overqualified, I I think at the end of the day, you just have to explain why you want the role,
Yeah.
why you'd be a good fit, and be sincere about it. Does
Yeah.
that help, Josh? I don't know if that.
Yeah. No, that was going to be the advice that I would give is hit it square in the nose up front. Don't let it be a lingering question. Like in the very first, however you talk to them, if it's the interview, if it's a cover letter or whatever, just address it directly. Let them know that you know. Don't leave it out there and let them wonder. Just say like, hey, this might appear as I'm overqualified, and some might view it that way. But here's why this is important to me, and here's why I think this is a great fit for me with where I am and where I want to go with my career. Just so people know it's not a pit stop. Um,
Yep.
so okay, so we hit that one, and then this is something with a lot of the large companies here in the Triangle. It's something I see a lot. So say you're updating your resume after working at a single company for over a decade. How do you summarize that experience? Like IBM is classic. I've had a lot of people that have applied to a lot of roles that I posted from IBM, and they've been there for well over a decade. And it is hard to understand what they've done as they try and keep that one company not taking up 7 sheets of their life with that resume. So, what are your thoughts on that, Harold?
Yeah. I think anytime you've got 7 pages of a resume, it's too much, right?
Right.
So let me tackle that right out of the gate because everyone's got a theory, and so if everyone's got a theory, there's no right answer.
Right.
So people are like, oh, everything's got to be on one page. I don't agree with that at all. If you've done a lot of things and you've got accomplishments and you've helped companies grow, uh, don't limit yourself to one page. Don't have 10 either, though, because it's
Right.
not going to be looked at. So in this case, if you've been at IBM for 10 years, okay, um, right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, well, that's the most relevant experience to whatever role I'm going for because that's the last 10 years.
Hmm.
What I did 12 years ago more than likely isn't going to be as applicable as what I've done over the last 10 years. So I really would recommend you have 10 years, but you break that down. Maybe it's multi years or um, more than likely you've done different things if you've been at a company like that for 10 years. So
Right.
in that example, I would certainly highlight your individual roles through that 10 years and what you've done and what you've accomplished. So almost break it out. Okay, IBM 10 years, uh, developer and was responsible for this, did this, helped the company this way. Product owner, 2016 to 2018,
Right.
achieved this, helped this. Break those out, show them, because you want to. I think it used to be right, back in the day. Oh wow, someone's been at a company 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. That's great. That's
Right.
stable. That was the American dream, right? That's
Hmm.
what we do. Now there certainly is a stigma at times if you've been somewhere too long that you haven't really grown your skills. So it's vastly important to show that you've done different things and you've grown your skills and you've taken on new projects and you've succeeded. So maybe it's
Right.
you've been at the same company for 10 years, but you've had five different jobs within it. Now, if you've only done the same thing for 10 years, it does become a little bit more of a challenge, but this is where you really need to put your thinking cap on and, yeah, I've had the same job for 10 years, but there has to have been different projects, different things, different ways to show that you've picked up
Yeah.
skills during that time.
Yep. Yeah, because I imagine the way you operated a decade ago is different than the way you operate now. So show the things that got you there. Maybe it's a big project or a big re-architecture or something like that that gave you these new set of skills. So what are those things over that decade gave you something new, that gave you a new tool to put in your toolbox that now you're more effective with things like that. So I would look at it like that. Okay. A couple more questions have come in. John, new viewer. Oh, by the way, I missed thanking Fuzz59 for the follow. Thank you. We are getting close to our follower goal. We're like 21% away. That's exciting. Once we get to 200 followers, that unlocks some more custom emotes and things like that. So that'll be more fun to be had by all. So the next question, and I'll jump in a little bit. So there are some folks that say that when a FTE job is posted, many of them are written for an internal guy in mind or an internal gal in mind, and then they're sent to HR as a formality. That's something you see, and I can say I've seen that in person because
Yep.
there have been times where I have worked at companies where we were required to make a position available to all for a certain period of time. Even though there was somebody that you wanted to promote into that role, we had to open it up. So there are 100% times where that happens, but it wasn't the norm for us. It was one of those things where it was a fair amount of red tape of, hey, here's a person that I want to put in a new role because they've been crushing it. But there was a thing we had to do. We had to open it up. And even though people put in resumes, we still looked at them because you never know. And at that time, we were hiring like crazy. So if somebody sent in a resume for something that looked good, like maybe we didn't have a position right then, but now we can reach out to them and try and find a nice landing spot for them now. Now, this isn't the same time. This was a decade ago when things were going really well. So I have seen that. Harold, what percentage, just a rough guesstimate, you think openings are like that?
Yeah, I mean, just pulling a number out of the air, 20%. And that's a guess. That might be on the high side. I
Yeah.
think your bigger companies are
Yeah.
doing that. I've seen it as well. A example right now. I've got a consultant that works for our firm with one of
Mm.
our end clients who's getting ready to convert to a full time role. She's been there a little over a year. She's
Right.
done a great job. They absolutely want to bring her on board. They need now. They're taking, I think, the best possible approach. Their HR, it does require them to post the job. The
Right.
hiring manager already knows that she's going to hire this individual, but they're getting the posting up and down as quick as possible. And it almost sounds like it's within hours of each other.
Yeah.
Now, it's frustrating. You apply to a job, it sounds exciting, you're the great fit, you know all these things, and you don't hear anything.
Right.
And there's no way to really know why and if it's the case. So my advice again is just, I know there are times during this process, and we've all been there. I've been there. Josh has been there.
Hmm.
That it gets frustrating. Like anything else, sometimes you just got to take a deep breath, take your
Right.
time, clear your head, but keep going. Don't quit or let one bad experience derail who you are as an individual.
Right.
Okay, so that to answer the question, yes, that occurs. We've seen it. I don't know how you identify that it's that kind of situation, unless again you've got to really, just like with those companies, develop a relationship with an internal recruiter.
Right.
They're like any position out there. If there's a company you want to work at, develop a relationship with that recruiter. If
Yeah.
they're a good recruiter, they're going to go back for you. And if this isn't the right position, they'll remember the next one.
Mhm.
I think don't treat it as transactional. Treat it as, you know what, I'm going to develop a relationship with that person. So even if it's not this role, it's the next one. I'll be front of mind.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. So Agile Jamie Collins from Devonshire, aka the birthplace of Sir Walter Raleigh. Um,
Oh, a lot of facts
yeah.
coming out on this call.
Well,
All
yeah.
right.
Well, that's because Jamie's daughter was studying Sir Walter Raleigh when we launched this stream, and the large painting of Walter behind me, and I was saying it incorrectly, and he and his daughter corrected my pronunciation. And he was like, listen, number one, this is where I live, and number two, my daughter's studying it right now, so like this is how you say it. Silly American. So his question is, when do you use a bio rather than a resume, or CV as we say in Devonshire?
Sure. I know, Josh, you gave the example before that you've gone to really just using your LinkedIn as the representation of you.
Yeah.
Now, you may go that route. I don't know if I would recommend that for everybody because I think that often can be based on well,
Yeah.
it's true, right?
Yeah.
Often, Josh, I think over the past few years, you've used your background, your connections, what you've done, and you've been established a profile for you that
Yeah.
this is the best representation. Um, if you're looking for a product owner role, a scrum master role, I would recommend having both. Now, I'm not sure I fully understand the question as far as bio. I think that what I would recommend is if you've got a resume and you've got a LinkedIn profile, have them be similar but not the same.
Yeah.
Meaning you can have some differences. It's just not a carbon copy of your resume,
Mhm.
but make sure it's accurate, right? If you've I and we've I've seen this and I've been burned on this by a hiring manager where LinkedIn profile has one job title, but the resume has a different one, and then the dates don't completely align.
Mhm.
And maybe it's a simple mistake, but it also cast out. So, to answer your question, I think your resume should always tell a story and the story of who you are and
Yeah.
what you've accomplished and how you've made the company you worked at better. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
my
So
2 cents.
I'll I'll jump in. And one of the things when I moved to North Carolina about 12 years ago was that I now was new. No one knew who I was. No one knew anything, and I realized that I needed to work on creating a personal brand. So there were things that I started doing, going to meetups, started a podcast, started all these things with the intent of building a brand of Josh, and this is who I am, and this is what I care about, and you can find out about all these things. So it was easy to understand who I was because I recognized that I was the new person in town, and there were already established folks that are in the area that people knew that when they thought of, hey, I need somebody for this role, this is the person I'm going to reach out to. So I was very aggressive in doing that. And LinkedIn, the thing that I liked about that is that there have been videos and podcast episodes and times I've been a guest on another podcast and things like that where I can post those directly in my bio within LinkedIn and people see that. And that's hard to get outside of a resume. So that's where I always push folks for that for me, but that's because I've been very aggressive in trying to establish that personal brand of this is Josh, this is what he does, this is why he'd be a good fit for you, and that took 7 or 8 years of hard effort to make that a reality. So Harold's right. Don't abandon the resume. Like that's not the right thing to do right now. In a decade, as you've built up that personal brand and done these things, then it might make sense that, hey, this represents more of who I am versus a resume. So that's how I flipped it. But Harold's right. I would not go to that extreme right now. And Harold will tell you that I am often a person of extremes within the hiring process. I often wear, I often dress down in a hiring process to see how they're going to react, to see how important the attire is. Like if they are going to get turned away by somebody that isn't as buttoned up as they would like, then maybe that's not a good fit for me because I'm a t-shirt guy, right? And that's important to me, but that's not as important to everybody as it is to me. So there have been times where I've told that story and people are like, I'm going to do that. And I'm like, you shouldn't do that because that's not as important to you as it is to me. It's a really important thing to me. So that's a test that I put in there. So again, I wouldn't copy some of the things I've done because we're all different and there are different things that are important. So I would pull out bits and pieces of what Harold and I have shared and find what fits for you. And the goal is that after today, that you have some little bit that you can take with you and say, this is how I'm going to adjust my job search or my hiring process or whatever it is. And there's not going to be a silver bullet. There's not going to be this one magical thing that you do. Harold said it over and over again. It's not a transactional thing, right? Don't take it personal. There's a million factors that play into it. If you didn't get the job, that's okay. Pick yourself up and apply to the next one. And apply and apply and apply, and you'll find the right fit. And most importantly, find someone like Harold. It's going to take time, effort, and energy to make that happen. And you're going to talk to people that you're going to walk away from like, I really do not like that person. I don't want to work with them. But you have to do that effort to find a Harold. So there were a dozen people that I talked to find those 3 or 4 that I really trust. And some of those relationship building things I went through with some of the folks that weren't a good fit wasn't a ton of fun, but it helped me find the right people that helped me go wherever I wanted to go in my career. So invest in finding someone like Harold, and that's probably the nicest thing I'll say about Harold.
Can I get a recording of this session when this is
it is
done?
recorded and it's
still
going
in a little shock right now.
So you can clip it and put it on your LinkedIn bio. You can do that.
Well, a couple of parting thoughts and just things that I'm thinking of. I know the main topic of this chat is what does the labor market look like right now?
Mhm.
Can you get hired? And it's an evolving day by day thing, but companies are still hiring. And there's actually a list. It's been pretty prevalent on LinkedIn and stuff. But Josh, I'll find it and send it to you of companies that are hiring during this time, and it's a significant amount of organizations. And I would just say keep an open mind, keep positive attitude. It's and the open mind thing's important. I've been at my company where I'm at now, APC, for almost 2.5 years. And 2.5 years ago, when I knew I'd be making a transition, I had in my mind a few companies that I thought I'd want to work for in my industry, and I targeted them. I was proactive on them, I used Josh, for example, on one of the instances as a referral. So
Mhm.
tried to work from a position of strength to get those that maybe have some influence to, not just be a reference, but even be proactive. Hey, do you mind, making a call on my behalf or mentioning some good things? I think that's perfectly appropriate if it's the right individuals. But during that process, what I thought was, I'll be candid. In my mind, APC was probably a fallback for me. And as I went through the interview process, I remember coming home to my wife and just saying, this is crazy. I want to work there. I love these people.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
They're nice. They've got integrity and
Yeah.
class and treat people the right way. And I my perception was I just wasn't as familiar with them as I was others.
Right.
That's not a negative on the other organizations, but for me, and just like what Josh said about him is he knows where he's going to be a good fit. Don't take a job just to take a job, unless I mean, look, there's instances where we all have to do that, of course, and we've all been there. But really figure out what's going to be the right fit for you, and your thoughts initially on what might be the right fit may change during that process. The other thought is just again everything you can do to promote who you are as an individual. Josh, a quick question: this stream, is it more focused generally on agile coaching, or is there a general?
Traditionally, yeah.
Yeah. So to me, if you're a contributing member of this group and you're often on these calls, uh, I'd find a way to mention that on my LinkedIn profile or resume. I wouldn't go overboard on it, but I think it just shows a passion for your craft. That's
Yeah.
often what the best way I can describe it when I hear from managers. What they want to see is you didn't just get into Agile because it was a trendy thing and it could pay well and great. You did it because you're passionate about it.
Mhm.
This is the conversation Josh and I had for years around hiring developers, right?
Yeah.
Why did you get into this because you really enjoy doing it and you found a passion for it, or is it just a job?
Mhm.
So if you're on this chat, this stream, you're passionate about Agile. Find a way to include that, or think about the other things that you're involved in your community, whether it's your physical community, your online community, your virtual network. What things that you do that show your passion, that's going to stand out.
Yeah, that's the key thing. Again, we go back to the resume, and I think there's ways you can tell that story about um, why this isn't just a job to you, because there's a million people that are out there that view it as just a job, and those it's going to sound harsh, but those are a dime a dozen, and that's not somebody that I'm looking to hire that's going to come in and make a difference. So I am looking for somebody that's a difference maker, not someone that just come in and just does the job, right? That's the no.
Great. I would
Uh,
also say to everyone, Josh, I don't know if you've shared via the stream,
yeah,
first and last name, but if you've got other questions, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer them the best I can.
yeah.
And
I will put your LinkedIn profile up, so you might get spammed. Sorry, Harold.
it's quite all right. But thank you, everyone, for allowing me to talk with you today. And again, if you got any further questions, I'd be happy to give my best possible answer or opinion, or hopefully in some cases,
Cool.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So reach out to Harold on LinkedIn. He's now on Discord, so you can find him there. Well, and again, so this is a conversation that doesn't have to end here on Discord. The thing that I really appreciate about this group is how everybody is willing to jump in and help. There have been multiple people that have been without a job that were trying to move into a Scrum Master role. And the amount of people that jumped in to help and offer support, suggestion, connections, whatever it might be, the community we have here is great. So number one, I appreciate everybody that makes that happen. That's the most exciting thing. And then the final question that came up was Agile Biker created a thing about he's passionate about giving Josh a hard time. Well, Harold and Eric, aka the Agile Biker, I will never introduce the two of you. because the combination of the two of you giving me a hard time is not something I ever want to be a part of, because you're both relentless and good at it. So I prefer to never make that connection in real life.
I'll do my research to find out how to connect with Agile Biker.
God. Okay, hey, Scrum Sarge, 13 months in a row for the subscription. Thank you. Yeah, no, we don't need that podcast. We don't need that podcast. That's not a good idea. The join forces and beat up Josh verbally is not anything anybody would want to listen to besides my wife, my kids, my friends. Harold, you might have a captive audience for that. So, okay, well, we're going to end the stream. Harold, thanks again for jumping in. And I know that we had no, we're not going to share that with Bob at all. We had like a last minute, we figured everything out last minute. We got all the audio working. So we are good there. So thanks for everybody for jumping in the chat. And thank you to Harold for coming in and lending your expertise. All right. See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.